Hi, I'm Jack West, medical oncologist at Swedish Cancer Institute in Seattle, Washington. One of the classic books in medicine is a fiction book called The House of God. It was written several decades ago, and it describes the medical training of several Harvard residents at Boston's Beth Israel Hospital. I read it during my own medical training, and the main character is a very colorful guy who tells his trainees that they can save themselves a lot of extra effort if they just don't go looking for trouble. His tenet is, you can't find a fever if you don't take a temperature. And I find myself thinking of this a lot as I go through my medical experience and life in general, that you don't really need to modify your own views if you don't incorporate any new information. What I'm finding is that my own views are shifting with regard to the important issue of molecular testing for driver mutations. We are living now in real time in a new world of molecular oncology that is really changing cancer care, as we find that specific molecular markers are very relevant in making treatment decisions and finding the best treatments for certain patients, and that's definitely true in the field of lung cancer. Right now, there are a few important driver mutations like an EGFR mutation or ALK rearrangement, and these have historically been identified with people who have an adenocarcinoma subtype of non-small cell lung cancer, and classically, these are also thought to be primarily, if not exclusively, in people who have a little or no smoking history. And so, what there is some controversy and debate over is whether we should be testing just about all patients, at least with advanced non-small cell lung cancer, for these driver mutations, or whether we should really be focusing our efforts on testing enriched populations who might have an adenocarcinoma or at least don't have a squamous non-small cell lung cancer, which is a subtype that has been historically associated with a very low probability of having one of these driver mutations. Maybe incorporating smoking history as well and focusing on testing patients who have smoked little or nothing at all, and not being as inclined to do molecular testing on those with an extensive smoking history. So this is still a work in progress, and you see different thoughtful oncologists with somewhat different perspectives. Historically, I've been inclined to not necessarily broadly test just about everybody, but I'm here to say that my own views have been evolving based on my growing experience of molecular testing. And specifically, in the last several weeks to couple of months, I've seen not only a larger proportion of my patients who come back with a driver mutation, and these are mutations tested at very good labs, reliably done, but the people who I'm finding have these mutations aren't necessarily all the ones I thought were highly likely to have them. I've been surprised by some. Some have been with a very significant smoking history. One patient actually was diagnosed a couple of years ago with a squamous cancer, had a recurrence that we biopsied, and surprisingly it showed an adenocarcinoma this time, and tested that, and he's got an ALK rearrangement now. And other patients have a very poorly differentiated cancer that can't really reliably be assigned as an adenocarcinoma or squamous or whatever. But the point is that I've been impressed that the more I look, the more the general rules that have evolved don't necessarily apply as well as we thought. In fact, I think those rules are largely evolved based on very small clinical experiences early on, and we find that the waters get much muddier when we test more patients. In fact, there was one memorable patient I learned about this year at my own institution who was diagnosed with a squamous non-small cell lung cancer, who had several molecular marker tests sent, and not only had an EGFR mutation, but also an ALK rearrangement. So this person violated the rules in many ways. A squamous cancer isn't supposed to have either of these, and EGFR mutations aren't supposed to be seen in the same patients who have an ALK rearrangement. And yet, this was the result that was seen in a very good lab. And so some people's cancers don't read the book, and there are, in fact, exceptions to just about every rule. What this leaves me thinking is that I am far more inclined right now to do broader testing than I was 6 or 12 months ago. And it's gotten me thinking very seriously that perhaps we should be doing testing not just on those who have an adenocarcinoma or a non-squamous non-small cell lung cancer, but perhaps also for those with a squamous cancer. And even though I've historically been not that enthused about doing molecular testing on rebiopsies or doing rebiopsies in patients who have progression of their disease, such as in acquired resistance, maybe in fact, we're going to learn valuable information from that, but you definitely aren't going to learn it if you don't do the testing. So this truly represents a change for me. And while nobody likes to admit they're wrong, I do think it's important to recognize when new data comes in that it should force us to reevaluate our mindset. And in this case, I think it's a good thing to step back and think, well, maybe my perspective should change. I'm becoming far less convinced that we should be restrictive on who to test, and I'm becoming more inclined to broadly test far more patients. I hope that's helpful. Take care.